Hello, everyone, and thank you again for joining the Artelize Podcast. We have an incredible guest today. I'm talking about the great Kasper Holten, CEO of the Royal Danish Opera, Ballet and Theatre as well. Welcome,
Sure.
Kasper.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
It is an absolute honor for us to have you. And I know our audience is already waiting for this episode. I will give a little presentation of your incredible career. You started extremely young, right? You were only 26 when you had your first major role.
I became artistic director of the opera company here, the Royal Danish Opera, when I was 26. Yes, so that was an early start.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think anyone else has had that experience, right?
I think Aviel Khan, who is now in Geneva and going to Berlin, he was about the same age when he first took his. So I think there are the two of us. But no, it was an early start, and of course a huge honor to start early. But also, yeah, it was early in my career.
Yes, you're still sort of a unique case, I would say. So we're glad that we're celebrating this today as well. But we will get back to this very early start. I know you have directed more than 65 productions across the globe in the major opera houses, the Royal Opera House, former Covent Garden, but also Teatro alla Scala di Milano, and of course, Vienna Staatsoper, and many others. I am particularly intrigued by your work because it was already so modern when you started, to the point that you also decided to take on a journey to direct the film of Don Giovanni, Don Juan. That was also, it's still an incredible achievement. And especially in your mission to, if I understand it right, to really bring and draw more people, younger people, to this old sort of art form, but really aiming at making it still relevant, still current, still modern. And one last thing I really want to mention is that you have been knighted by the Queen of Denmark.
I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud that the former Queen of Denmark awarded me both the knighthood and the Ingenieur d'Arte medal. Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. So, Kasper, just to break the ice, if you have a little anecdote or fun fact you would like to share with us, possibly something you have never shared before, but it's okay if you have.
I don't know if I have anything I've kept secret until now, but I can certainly tell that I was intrigued by opera from a very early age. I was 9 years old when my father took me to see Carmen here at the Royal Danish Theatre in our old house from 1874. We now have a new, beautiful opera house on the harbor in Copenhagen, which I had the great pleasure of opening as during my time as artistic director here. But this old house is still very, very magic for kids. And I saw Carmen when I was 9 years old and completely fell in love with this opera, with the idea of opera. I went home, I borrowed some of the libretti and the library, and I listened to my dad's records, and then my parents bought me a puppet theater, like one of these puppet theaters, not with hand puppets, but with cardboard cutout puppets. And I started out playing some of the kind of like old traditional Danish plays you could purchase ready-made, but very soon that was not enough for me. So I think in the age from 12 to 16, I performed the Ring des Nibelungen in my puppet theater, uncut, for my poor suffering family who had to sit through 16 hours of Wagner opera in the puppet theater. And so when I directed The Ring in Copenhagen in 2006, it was actually my second production of Der Ring des Nibelungen, if you count my homemade version where there was a Danish king in the 16th century called Christian IV, who was a very notorious Danish king, and he has a patch for one eye. So of course I could use him. I had him from one of my plays. I could use him for Wotan, and so on and so forth. So you make do with what you have at your disposal, and theater comes out. So I was driven by this from a very early age.
That is a beautiful story. And I love also this Danish creativity because I've been in contact with Danes now for a while. And I know you guys are extremely creative.
I would say that we are in Denmark quite proud of creativity. Notoriously, of course, that my favorite toy was Lego bricks. And I think it's something that kids around the world, and even parents, if we're honest, around the world, have found lots of pleasure in the fact that not only can you create the thing that you have a recipe for, the set that you purchased, but you can then rebuild it and keep building, and that these bricks invite you to explore your own creativity, your own curiosity, finding new ways of using specific bricks. And so Lego was a huge part of my childhood. And I even, to continue my story, I built also a Lego opera house where I remember
Oh,
I performed Eugene Onegin. So all my Lego men, these tiny figures, I had to take off their legs and put them in the auditorium. And then when the first act was over, I had to take them all out and put the legs back on and put them out in the foyer. So it was quite a work to have to move the whole audience around manually. So certainly I think it's a good example of what Lego is good at. When I was curious about opera, it could be used to express myself about opera. Had I been interested in, a police station, you can build a Lego police station. You can really create worlds and explore what already fascinates you, Lego. And that's one of the great things about that toy, that rather than having a very specific function and being only able to be what it is, it really invites you to keep imagining and reimagining. And that I think is a gift that we have with us.
absolutely. And I'm just curious, did Lego ever contacted you to get actually that model of Opera House as a product? Because I would have bought it.
Lego actually has not our opera house, but a theater that you can buy. And I bought it last summer and built it with my kids, and it was fun. And I'm happy to say that next year, when we are opening here in Copenhagen as a very new innovation, we're opening a children's universe, which will be our old drama stage will be transformed into a huge theatrical playground for children, where they can dress up, where they can listen to opera music, where they can put on ballet shoes, where they can be on stage themselves. So not a place where we do shows, but kind of like an interactive playground for theater. And the Lego Foundation certainly is part of supporting the realization of that, and will be part of that universe. So I'm happy to say that Lego still plays a part in my life, both privately and professionally.
If you ever thought, I'd love to try opera, but I'm not sure where to start, well, this is for you. Our sponsor, Queen's Opera Theatre, is creating something truly special this season. It's opera made for everyone, welcoming, intimate, and full of heart. On Saturday, October 18th, join them for Songs for Saplings, an open-air evening amongst flowers and stars. In collaboration with the Compost Collective, you'll walk through a garden and enjoy fine live music, familiar favorites, unexpected gems, and the soaring voice of soprano Gabriella Giangreco. Rain date, October the 25th. Then, on Monday, December the 1st, it's time for warmth and candlelight for their cozy holiday program at the Forest Hill Women's Club, featuring the luminous soprano Alexandra Lang. Whether it's your first opera or the 50th, this is your invitation. Grab your tickets now. Find the link below in the description. And better yet, bring someone you love with you. Because when you share the magic, it becomes unforgettable. And that's amazing. And I love this concept of having the kids experiencing, not just listening. I mean, it made an impact on you only to be at a show.
What we have to fight for today is, and I think there are many good things about this project. I think we have to fight for curiosity. I think we live in a time where algorithms serve our kids and ourselves more and more of what we already know. We are given more and more of what we already are interested in, and we need to fight for curiosity, for staying curious, for exploring other things. I think that is part of what we can hopefully do. We can maybe plant the seeds in some kids, that music, that drama can be part of helping them overcome the problems that we know that young people are struggling with today, the feeling of inadequacy, loneliness, the feeling of having to pretend to be something you're not. All of these things are some things that the arts can mitigate, the community you can find in the arts, the way that you play together, and that you have to make each other good when you are on stage is something we can teach the kids about. And then, of course, also that in theater and opera and ballet, so many crafts go into this. It's not just about the ballerina or the soprano at the front of the stage. You have the props makers, you have the costume makers, you have the makeup artists, you have the administrators, you have the builders, you have all the kinds of people who make special effects or fake blood or whatnot. And to just show kids as they're growing up today, that not only the kids who are great at math or excellent with literature, but also kids who have other skills, who have other differences, can have a voice and can contribute to this community. I think that's a very important message, and I hope our children's universe can inspire more children to either have music as a hobby in their life, or who knows, to go into a profession which also could take them to work in a theater or an arts organization.
Absolutely. And, coming from the opera, I would also say it's not always all about the tenor and the soprano. There are also the others. So, I mean, that's a great important point.
Opera is a team sport if there ever existed one.
That is also another brilliant aspect that I know you convey when you created the production, but I guess also in the work you put in with your team. And this vision about bringing this kind of experience to the younger one, like it's exactly what we need right now. And I have a teenager son, and so I totally resonate with what you say.
Sometimes if you look to the world of science, they've been better at doing this, or even visual arts have had these kind of offers. Um, if you go to the London Transport Museum, you see kids running around and learning about transport, not because their parents are passionate about transportation, but because it's a fun place where you learn through play. And why do we not do that in the performing arts? That's been my question for some years since I worked in Covent Garden, and I'm really happy that we are now exploring this as on a massive scale. As far as I know, doing it on this scale is the first in the world, and I hope that this is going to be something that will create a trend and show new ways to engage young people with the arts.
Yes, and at least the technology does something good. Think about the social media, for example, could help leverage this kind of experiences and bring them really everywhere and not just confine them to a single place. So that could be a positive utilization of technology.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dilemma, of course, because I'll be honest and say when we do the children's universe, one of our main ideas is that it will be more or less smartphone free, that it will be real, it will be physical, it will be tactile. You don't dress up on an app on your phone. You dress up by putting on a costume
Yeah.
and by getting painted in your face, and that it's a physical experience. But then, of course, it's true that we want to extend that experience so that after you come home, you can still play with the music that you created or see the pictures that you took or the stage play you put together. We want to share the news about this, and we want to share it with school kids all over Denmark. And that means, of course, also that yes, physical meetings are, I think, extremely important to promote the world of theatre, but it's clear that also digital tools in terms of promoting and telling about our world is extremely important. So the interplay between good digital marketing, good digital training, together with the physical meeting that happens in the theater, is absolutely a necessary combination for this to not just be for the people who already know about theater, but to also be for the kids who have never been to the theater before. And that's, of course, the whole point. It should not just be for the already converted.
Absolutely. I can tell also by experience that they're always all mesmerized, literally, when they have the opportunity to have a physical experience of what the arts is. So, and I love the Scandinavian way of you guys really putting a specific and very deep care on the development of the youngest. And even this smartphone free experience, this is actually bold nowadays, right? And but I know you are amongst the first that have been really taking real measures, even I think reducing the utilization of phones in school, if not really removing them. So I wanted to ask you something about your early start. Do you think that the vision you have right now, is it particularly advanced also because you started early? Maybe you made several mistakes, but then you sort of learned faster? Or what were the pros and cons of starting early?
So that's a complex question because you can never really know who I would have been if my life course had been different. But yes, for sure, I think there were in my early years, because I did not have as much formal training, because I entered a management position in a relatively young age. I think I was still maybe in the process of searching for what was my answers to why is opera important? What does opera mean in tomorrow's society? I didn't enter the director's office in an age where I already had my bag full of experiences, but at a time when I was still searching. And I think that has led me to, hopefully, to this day, even now that I am more mature and have more experience, and of course have made a lot of mistakes and have had a lot of failure and have experienced what goes right and what goes wrong and what you learn from it, hopefully. Um, I still hope that I am maintaining this process of always questioning myself, always questioning my own dogma, always questioning the way I do things, always trying to learn, because I didn't really have any formal training. So the highest degree I have is a high school degree. I don't have any formal university degree. I don't have any formal training as a stage director. I didn't have any formal management training when I was offered the job. But I do think that I came from a point where I was always a very intelligent child who would maybe be good at analysis, good at capturing the world with my brain. But what I needed to learn was the physical experience of working with other people, to be open, to express myself, to be able to handle big emotions, to be able to handle complex situations. And I think it was a gift for me to learn this through not studying, but through being an apprentice, working as assistant director to good directors, seeing how it was done in practice, trying out on my own in small theater companies, smaller productions, making my own mistakes. So yes, I think that whole background of me learning through doing, we live in a time and age, and nothing wrong about that, where we talk a lot about theoretical training and the importance of training and education. That is certainly important, but I think we should not overlook also the importance of learning through working, through taking over from people who have experience, and to kind of uh, study through working with people. And I think that has made me hopefully very to this day reflective and always questioning of my own dogma, so that I hopefully don't get stuck in saying there's just one way of doing it and my way is the right way, but I continue to try and be on a search throughout my life. But yes, some of my thoughts about opera were probably worded during my when I took over when I was 26 and took over the National Opera Company, and very soon we were told we would open a new opera house, which was a big national event where I really had a fantastic window of opportunity, both because I was young and unusual in this role, and this new opera house was something that was talked about, to really talk to the nation of Denmark about opera. And I think some of the ideas I had then still live with me. That, as I've called it, I think opera is ultimately a kind of emotional fitness center, a fitness center where we train our emotional life, where we can exercise all the big questions, all the things that really matters in life, all the things that when we have to leave the planet, it will be the ups and downs of our emotional lives that will truly define the life we had. And that is what we in opera, in a very condensed form. People say opera takes a long time, but actually, in one evening of La Boheme, you are through what normally you have to spend an entire emotional life, from the first love to death and despair. You can live through that in 2.5 very concentrated hours. So actually, opera is a very intense workout. And it has always been an important point for me to then say, to include the audience in that, in thinking that it is just like in the real fitness center. It doesn't work if you just go there and look at the bicycle. You have to get on it. You have to get on the treadmill yourself. We have to invite the audience. That is not about us telling them what to think. It is about us inviting them in to be curious, to try and study their own emotions, to try and reflect themselves on what's happening, and thus engaging with these big emotions, that hopefully we will come out a bit more strong, a bit more empathetic. I think society today more than ever before needs a place where we rehearse being empathetic, where we train our empathy, and that is what the opera house can offer us.
Yeah, and that's why I believe it's universal for all these things you have said, which is unfortunate because this is in stark contrast with what is happening with the audience right now. And I'm talking not specifically about Copenhagen or Denmark, but worldwide. We have seen a decline that is massive, and even before the pandemic. So, what is your experience on that? I mean, you were young, you were brilliant, but the world of opera, we know, can also be very conservative. Sometimes it's a big tradition, and rightfully so. I mean, I'm Italian. When I go to the Un Teatro all'Italiana, I feel like, so small and in reverence of the past. But at the same time, our life is different. So what's your take on that?
So that's a very good question. And it is true that opera is really about something that we all share, despite our socioeconomic background, our age, where we come from, our conditions. We all have emotions. We all experience love, and we all experience death. We all experience these big things that define our lives. So I completely agree that that is a paradox if opera ends up being just an interest for, let's say, old people, or people from a certain social class, or rich people's playground. I'm happy to say that the trend that you describe, I think in some places that's true. That's not the case here. We are, more or less 30% up with our audiences for opera compared to before the pandemic. And we see a very strong audience that goes across all age groups, including young people. We see that the work that we do for very young audiences, where we are very focused on not just doing something wonderful, but also about having a big reach, and about reaching the people geographically and socioeconomically who would not normally come here, that we don't just cater to the people who already like us, that is paying off. But it is true that opera is, as an industry, in need of change. And I think unless we have the courage to change and to think that what we are fighting for, the core of opera, is so important that it is worth our institutions, our business model changing in order to preserve that. And we cannot preserve that if we end up becoming a reverse Robin Hood, if opera houses end up being poor people paying taxes to subsidize rich people's entertainment. That is simply not good enough. So I think what we have done is you need to work on all levels. You need to work on accessibility. So you need to make sure that you sell tickets in a relevant way. For instance, for the under 25s, we have developed a new subscription model where for 12 euros a month, you have free access to all opera, ballet, drama, symphonic concerts. So much like your Netflix subscription or your Spotify subscription, it's a contemporary way of having a subscription. Maybe it's a good gift when you turn 18, if your parents think you have enough things, if you don't want to consume anymore and produce more carbon dioxide, you can then go and explore culture instead and maybe grow a good habit before you turn 25 of going to the theater, because suddenly it's for free to take a risk. If you've never seen an opera before, you don't have to take a risk because it's already paid for, so you might as well go and try it out. And so thinking in new ways about how you market, how you address it, how you program it, how you put together new ways of doing things that makes it accessible to different audiences, not just young audiences, but different audiences altogether. That's the first layer. You also have to think about relevance. I know that for us opera people, I adore uh, a lot of repertoire that would maybe be by some be considered more ambitious. We should definitely do it. We have done Shostakovich the Nose, we have done Cacciacavanova, we have done contemporary opera, and this is all wonderful and good and important that we do that. But it is also important that we have always had uh, a prejudice in the opera world that we said, well, if we want a new audience, if we want a young audience, then we should produce something new. And actually, if we study the data, it turns out that young people, new audiences, want to come and see La Traviata. They want to come and see Tosca. They want to come and see Carmen and La Boheme because they have never seen these big classics that maybe we feel we're getting tired of repeating. And B, if you're going to something for the very first time, if you've never seen an ice hockey game before, if you've never been to a live concert before, you will most likely pick something that you've somehow heard about that feels a bit safer. So title is important. And so if we want to attract a new audience, it is also important that we have a Traviata in a long run, which can then bring in a new audience and we market it accordingly. So relevance in your repertoire and putting together more systematically a program where you say each project, of course, must have great artistic integrity and ambition in itself. But when you put together the entire season, the entire portfolio of your theater, you need to work with audience data to see that you are sure that you are making programming that will speak to different audience groups. And if you put together your audience groups in your programmation systematically so that you know that each project artistically has its own integrity, but that when you put your entire portfolio together, you're sure that you have an offering that will speak to more diverse people, to more different segments in the audience, then that will also mean that you bring in a new audience. But that takes courage to even talk about these things in terms of artistic programming. That is not just about what would we like to perform, but it is also about looking how you put together a program that reaches a wider audience. And then I think the third layer is what you just talked about, which is also important, and something we've only come to understand now, how the threshold for people who have never been here before, how all that we love about the building and the tradition and we call it a libretto instead of calling it a manuscript, which again just alienates the people who've never been before, who maybe don't know what that means. We have so many traps built in. We have so many ways of telling people this is difficult. We tell people that they have to study the synopsis before or they will not understand, despite the fact that most opera is not really rocket science. I mean, most opera is boy and girl meet, boy and girl fall in love, girl dies of tuberculosis and boy gets upset. It's not rocket science. We've had surtitles since 1982. Why are we telling the audience that they could not come and just engage with a great universal story told in wonderful music? Of course, then yes, if you study it, you will get more nuance, just as it is with football and with red wine and everything else in the world. But to take away that spontaneous joy of seeing your life's first Tosca by telling you have to know who gets killed when, in advance is somehow a weird problem that we build into our way of talking around opera. So I think if we work on all three levels, if we have the courage to really think about the way we sell tickets, that we market, that we talk to audiences, that we use digital tools, if we have the courage to involve audience data more actively in our programmation without, of course, compromising on artistic quality and integrity, and if we have the will to look at the threshold and to see our world through new eyes and understand how do we welcome new audiences, and are we making it harder or are we making it easier for them to feel that they are a member of this club, then we can truly talk to a lot of people. Because I think what we're doing is as relevant as ever before. The more that we all get digital, the more that we all sit with our screens, the more that we get used to having everything available in short format for free. I mean, I would hate to run a television station these days. That must be difficult. But what we are doing, live opera, live ballet, live drama, live symphonic music, there'll be more need for that than ever before in an age where we sit with our screens always. We just have the courage to say our art is important, but the business model and the way we program it and sell it, our industry has to change.
When the lights go down in the opera house, you don't know who's sitting next to you, and it doesn't matter. As Opera America's president Mark Skorka says, in the theater we discover our shared humanity. For more than 50 years, Opera America has led and served the opera community, supporting artists and companies, fostering new works, and helping audiences discover the power of opera. From professional development and research, to championing equity and inclusion, to managing the National Opera Center in New York City, Opera America unites everyone who cares about opera. Whether you're stepping into your very first performance or creating the next big production, there's a place for you here. Join today at operaamerica.org/join and help keep opera alive, relevant, and for everyone. Artelize is proud to work with Opera America on groundbreaking audience research. We're donating $500 to Opera America's Audience Research Fund for every customer who signs up for our annual Plus plan. Find all the info and the links in the description below. So much important content in here. I just want to reiterate how the power of live performance, even opera, even when you don't know anything. I remember performing in Hanoi, Vietnam. People went crazy. You're so right. You don't need that preparation. And also, I wanted to mention that Artelize recently made this study with Opera America, and we confirm what you were reporting. The newcomers are actually going up, and they're younger, and they tend to go to the traditional because that's what they want. They're looking for their great operatic experience. So we have noticed that a lot of arts organizations, though, especially we have seen that with symphonic, tend to title their events with composer and name of the work, or composer conductor, or just name of the work. And that goes also for opera. And as you mentioned yourself, not all titles appeal, because now the competition is with Netflix, with this kind of new platforms that it's something that I can consume right away. I don't even need to get dressed. A lot of arts organizations still seem to be captured in the old way of presenting the title of the event, which is exactly the first thing you see or you come across. So instead of utilizing the title of the work, could it be just something that evocates the experience? So what you were saying before, as a love story with a crazy ending or a super funny ending. Have you thought about that already?
Yeah, I think you're onto something. It's a very interesting dilemma. We see, I think, as a very strong mega trend in the world of opera, and certainly theater and ballet the same all over the world, that fewer and fewer titles are recognizable and sellable, bankable. I think when I started in opera, you would have thought that you would have 40 or 50 safe titles, and now maybe that's down to 10. And even something like, I don't know, Janacek, that would have been considered kind of core repertoire 40 years ago, is now considered a complete outlier that you would have to program instead of a new opera. And that is a very big problem. I think that the curiosity is under a lot of pressure, and we end up all doing the same 10 works over and over and over again because they are the ones that the audience wants to come and see. In particular, if we're interested in attracting a wider audience, it seems that we have to use these titles. At the same time, it is weird because when we look to film, when we look to streaming, when we look to books, literature, it's not really about having an old title recycled. Yes, that happens, but as often there's great curiosity about a new series, a new creation, about something new and exciting that comes. So why is it that we haven't found the way of creating that effect of the new in the world of opera and ballet? And that is certainly something that we need to study and think more about. In the meantime, I think you're right. I think the way to do it is that hopefully, my hope is that certainly in a city like Copenhagen, I think over time, there is now so much on offer. There's so many things you could do. There's so many things that you could pick and choose from digitally that actually sometimes, as you say, putting in an effort and putting on some clothes and booking a ticket and going somewhere together with a date or a friend and doing something becomes part of the experience itself, that actually you don't want to just sit in front of the TV and you're getting bored of sitting with the screen alone all the time, that actually sometimes putting in an effort and going out is part of the experience. So the customer experience, the whole package, of course, the artistic product, but also how is the restaurant, how is the bar, how is the digital customer journey, how is our parking facilities, did the audience know what they were buying, did we have great expectation management? All of this becomes more and more important because the experience becomes more important. And then hopefully, my big hope is that the next phase will prove that with so many things on offer, a bigger portion of the audience will want help to curate things, that they will want us to help them pick and choose 2 or 3 things a year that they should see to be culturally literate, to be informed of what's going on. And that hopefully more and more, instead of just going with Carmen and Bohème and Traviata, which they've already heard about, there would be a growing proportion of the audience who actually wants to experience something new and who would look to us to help them choose. Possibly through algorithms again, so that we are helping people based on their taste, but also helping them go a little bit further than what they already know and say, if you like this, maybe you could stretch your taste to go to this and then see this. You know, I think if we can combine technology, audience data, and building a trust from the audience in our organization with this wider audience that we are now reaching, if we gain their trust over time and if we give them a great experience, the trust that we gain as an institution and not just as the Nutcracker or as La Traviata could be something to build on. And that is, I think, the fourth level in the kind of three-step tier I talked about before. And that is something that interests me a lot. It is something we have to do because otherwise, you know, in the worst case, we would end up simply becoming theaters that only play Traviata all autumn and Tosca all spring. And although they are great masterpieces, both of them, that would also be a great tragedy because there are so many other works with great value. So I think we have to think harder in the industry about how we can attract people to different other product and how we can curate, help people curate an offering based on a trust that they build with us as an institution. But we're not there yet. We still see this mega trend of it being the very popular, famous titles that tend to draw in more people. I've even gone so far as to joke about there was a new dance piece that was really brilliant, but it had a title that nobody knew and it was difficult to sell it. And I said, we should just call it Romeo and Juliet. And someone said, but it's not about Romeo and Juliet. And I said, it doesn't matter. Just call it Romeo and Juliet and people will come. It's of course a joke, but we don't want to disappoint our audience. We want to be honest about what we're doing. But it is a little bit tough to see how in the world of theater that the trend seems to be favoring very few mega titles. And that is something we need all to think about. How can we go beyond that?
What I can say from our part at Artelize, what we have observed, and I'm talking about the US, but also Europe, of course, is that according to the reports on new audiences trends, people are willing to pay for great experiences that allow them to reconnect with themselves or to relax, to be inspired, to get out of this chaotic, super stimulating reality, or just to try to find a bit more quality time, whether it is with themselves or with their family. So I think when you know that, and you can build on the trust you were mentioning, because the trust is exactly what also helped. I know from another interview I did, the Orchestra of Liège to sell out their season without even announcing the titles. Why? Because people just wanted to hang in there. They felt it was like, hey, it's a great place anyway. We want to be there.
And that is great. I think should be careful that we cannot shortcut that process. So we are in the process of now, hopefully us and other theaters building that trust with a much larger audience. We see a much larger proportion of Danish population coming here and using us, many more different audience groups responding to this variation in repertoire we have now, which is good. And then we can start building, hopefully, that trust with more people, because for many years we saw the regular customer base just declining. If we can start to now slowly build that again, like the example in Liège, or as we see in other places, that is very, very good. But we need to be careful to not too soon jump to conclusions, that we still, if we really want to attract the broader public, I think still we do need the mega titles, and we do need to program accordingly, and then find the balance that overall we also have the artistically exciting projects next to titles that we do well and in an ambitious way and with great artistic integrity, but also because we know they appeal to a big audience. So it's a process of doing it in the right order, but I share your hope.
It's rare that an abrupt change will get the right outcome. It's always good to be wise and strategic about. And that's why, as you were saying yourself, being data driven, so trying to measure what you do, the results of what you're doing, something we're not really accustomed to do in the world of live performing arts. We have always been following our guts. Maybe that would be the first step. So try to see, okay, is what I do really successful as I think, or can I change?
It's of course very important to say, because some people will then hear this as an attack on artistic freedom, and of course it shouldn't be. The real attack on artistic freedom is if our organizations keep shrinking, get smaller and smaller, and in the end we can only afford to do La Traviata. So when we have done in Copenhagen a growth, and we now have a much larger audience, which we do also through programming titles, Nutcracker, La Traviata, that we know that a lot of people will come and see, this enables us to do new opera. This enables us to do Shostakovich The Nose. This enables us to do the Danish premiere of Manfred Trojan's Orest. This enables us to also do the challenging and artistically ambitious things. So real freedom doesn't lie in just being free to do whatever you want. Real freedom also lies in giving yourself the muscle, the power, the reach, the attention you need to be able to program courageous work. And so in a real pragmatic world, the artistic project must have great integrity and must be protected, but you need to make sure that you look at the checks and balances in your overall approach. And I think, yes, you should look at whether it's successful or not. That's not the same as some people in my data department, I'm sure, would sometimes say, why don't we just do more of what we know is successful? And I would sometimes say, yes, we know that this is not universally liked. We know this comes with risk. We know that some people will not like that we do it this way, but we're going to do it anyway because we think it's important. But maybe we only do it for 5 performances or whatever, but it's still important. So knowing more is not the same as letting the knowledge dictate your decisions. It just means that you make decisions on a more informed basis. And that is important to underline. So I think some people in our business have almost been afraid of knowing more, because instinctively we know that the model we were working from was broken. And so we are afraid to find that out if we know more. And it's easier to just go by the gut instinct and what we feel is right. But when you have knowledge, then you also have power. That is not the same as letting the knowledge dictate your choices. It is about making informed choices. And I think there's a big difference. And in our industry, you have to be much more brave at looking reality in the face and knowing what we're doing.
Exactly what you were saying also about technology. It's not that we should refuse or reject technology altogether, but we should learn how to use it smartly. And as you were saying, some choices might seem unpopular for the present moment, but might be successful also from the longevity. So we are here operating really on a much broader level.
Some of the people who sometimes promote courage are actually, in my view, wanting to become very conservative and defending the existing order, whereas real courage is also to try and look ahead and say change is necessary and is possible, and that we must have the confidence to say that change is okay, because what we do is ultimately so important that it has a great future ahead of it. But yes, and certainly in terms of technology, I mean, opera at the end of the day is an analog art form, and that is the beauty of it. And I think we should fight for keeping it that way. But of course, technology in terms of the way we market it, the way we tell people about it, the way we produce it, the way we have our administrative procedures, the way we sell tickets, the way we maybe, create environments and whatever, opera has always, when you look back to Wagner's time, he was curious about, contemporary stagecraft and modern technology. And it would be a great loss if our industry, which has always been, if you go to any European city and you want to find the central square, you find the opera house, because that's where ideas came together. That's where politics, arts, poetry, music uh, came together and exchange ideas. If opera houses have now instead become islands that separate themselves from contemporary life, that would be really sad. And I think real courage is having the confidence of behalf of opera that we can change and be of even more value than ever before.
So my next question would be, as a CEO, you're managing a team. And so I guess you utilize technology. And so what is your take on AI as a tool to fasten some processes? Do you have, already something you can share with us? Because that has been very controversial lately. At some point, people were, oh no, AI, crazy. And now they're actually, hey, when do you automate everything? So we're going a little bit to the two
Yeah.
extremes. What's your take?
Oh God, it's a super difficult question. I think, like everyone else, I don't know, to be frank. I mean, if somebody had told me in 1993 what the internet would be, I would not have believed it or been able to imagine it. So who are we to say what AI will be in the next 20 years? I think all great technological advance in humankind has come with risks and with people who abuse it for terrible purposes, and this will probably also be the case with AI. But fundamentally, technological uh, progress has always improved the condition of humankind overall, our way to connect to each other, our way to fight poverty and to create more knowledge around the world. So I'm probably fundamentally an optimist. I think, of course, that what we do in an opera ballet theater is so complex that there would be many areas of planning, of administrative processes, of HR processes where AI could be super important and super helpful in order to not just free up resources for the arts, but it of course could also produce more meaningful work life for our people, for our staff, because they would be able to focus more on the interesting bits of the work, on creating meaning instead of just handling manual processes or doing double work or all the things that maybe happen today. So I think there's a great potential. I think there's a great potential in AI helping us to understand our audiences better, because what AI is good at is really trawling data and seeing patterns that we may not be able to see. But I still am also fundamentally a pretty conservative person at heart, who thinks that for all the technological progress, us sitting here, having never met in real life and yet being able to see each other and having a conversation with each other, what an amazing thing that we could not even have imagined 10 years ago, even before the pandemic. Video meetings was not really a thing, and that is now possible is amazing. But it still is about human contact, human ideas, human exchange. And so I don't fundamentally think that AI, which in the end of the day is still a system that can guess what might come next and can make very qualified guesses, but is ultimately a guessing machine, that would ever replace human creativity or human curiosity, human exchange. I don't think so. So I'm fundamentally quite optimistic. Some people will for sure abuse it. There will be risks and there will probably be problems that we didn't foresee. I could worry sometimes for my kids growing up in a ever more digital world, what it will mean to them. But then again, I look at the world and I think, for all the things that we think is difficult, is also a lot of progress in the world. And although we have to find a way to handle the climate crisis and of course make sure that the planet is still exists in 100 years or 200 years, fundamentally there's a lot of progress happening around the world. More people come out of poverty. More people of both sexes have educations, and I think technology will help create opportunity.
There are many problems nowadays. The world is chaotic. We're we have lost it probably. So something that you really from the heart you feel like sharing out there to keep on showing the way as the leader you are.
We have a program for opera and ballet in schools. And in 2019, just before the pandemic, I went to a school which is only a few kilometers from the Royal Danish Theatre, but could easily be on the moon, for all it matters that the parents and kids there have no idea that the Royal Theatre is for them. And we had done a program of training their teachers to help the fourth graders put on their own version of the Nutcracker. And I went there in December 2019 to see them on a grey Wednesday morning, to see them in their gymnasium, in their school, perform their version of the Nutcracker. These 10-year-old kids, and afterwards, the headmaster of the school invited me for coffee, and he said, "We love it when you come because there are so many things that the kids learn from doing this with you. But you know what the best thing about when the Royal Theatre comes with these projects for us, what the most important thing is, it's always an opportunity for other kids to suddenly shine." That touched my heart, and if that could be what our business is about, not just about producing this opera or that or selling more tickets, but it's about giving voice to more people in our society, then how important is that?
Kasper Holten, thank you so much from Artelize, of course, but also on behalf of this industry, which is amazing. And thank you for being the person you are and for leading the way in this way, which is so much what we need right now. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much.